The city's response to the occupation of the valley was to seek a civil injunction to end it and to force the resumption of construction. The city initially named 2 occupiers in the suit seemingly at random, and eventually 6 others took on the task of representing themselves in a fight against the injunction. Andrew Loucks was one of those 6.
That was yet another set of meetings, and a lot of steep learning and a lot of looking into other struggles, usually environmental struggles, a lot of them out in BC that produced other court decisions, and trying to figure out what can we possibly do here. And I mean, from other actions that I'd been involved in, which were much more time limited. They were like, you know what, we're concerned about this issue, let's do a nonviolent direct action, perhaps there was bombing in Iraq or whatever. Those were different in that they weren't time limited, or they were time limited, pardon me. They involved the criminal court system rather than the civil one, and so it was a whole new can of worms and quite difficult to deal with. Yeah.
And talk more about how you and the collective of you engaged in that process. So there was research into precedents. There was probably lots of meetings to discuss strategy. What else did that sort of line of work involve for you?
Trying to contact lawyers who might offer pro bono services, or affordable services, usually pro bono services. Or who might have specialized knowledge in specific legal defenses, usually to do with pickets, or environmental actions. Yeah, I remember calling, trying to contact lawyers in BC who were involved in defending people who tried to stop logging in areas of BC.
And out of that process of research and discussion and reaching out to lawyers and so on, what did you come up with in terms of how you were going to present your case?
I mean, it was, to be honest, the reaction from a lot of lawyers was and eventually our reaction was, this is maybe a little bleak. This is difficult. I mean, we really tried. We tried extremely hard, and we certainly had a lot of criticisms of the city in terms of how they'd gone about the project in terms of consultation, or the fact that they were seeking an injunction to begin construction on a specific part of the expressway, but hadn't necessarily secured all their permits to excavate the Rennie Street dump, or the Niagara Escarpment Commission. It wasn't clear whether or not there was full blessing from the Niagara Escarpment Commission, but that commission didn't really have authority necessarily to stop construction. So we tried these various things, but at the end of the day, the law was a little bleak, and just in terms of our legs to stand on as citizens in a community that was quite, at best, divided, quite strongly divided about whether or not this massive project, which was going to radically transform a huge green space, was going to proceed. It was so it was kind of frustrating. It was kind of frustrating in that regard.
And how did it play out? What happened?
Oh, with the court proceedings? Yeah, a lot. There were many twists and turns. I mean, actually, before this interview, I kind of went back over some of my digital files and was surprised to find a transcript from the Gowling's law office, they called me in to cross-examine me, which I'd forgotten about, and so I have this transcript of being cross-examined on this affidavit, because we all prepared affidavits, those of us who put our names forward, and had to learn some things. I think I'm answering your previous questions actually more than this one, but had to learn some things about the rules of civil procedure. Had to get annoyed by having our filings, rejected by the court because it didn't have the right color back on it, or the wrong word was in the wrong place. So a civil law turned out to be, for us, just kind of a nightmare. It's where it's a game of money. Not only money, but if you have a lot of money, which the city did, they had huge advantages, and then the nature of some of the laws seemed to favor kind of property and doing what you want with property over democratic process, for instance, right? So I remember being flabbergasted at one point because we had filed a motion the day before a court hearing, which we were allowed to do. We filed some material, and the city's law firm Gowling's had prepared a response overnight. They had multiple lawyers overnight digging up other case law, and had actually responded in kind with like a dozens of page reply in like less than 12 hours. We're like, yeah, we were sleeping. We're trying to get some, right? So it's sort of an example of what you can be up against when your own government has hired a huge law firm with lots of resources, and you're on this sort of battlefield of civil law, which is extremely complicated and so on. We eventually, I'm probably lost on half of the technicalities at this point, because I haven't had the pleasure of dealing with civil law since then, but I think the court was trying to decide the legitimacy of an interim injunction. It didn't end up going to trial. We lost. The city's injunction was granted basically, eventually by the courts. But there was a day and a half or so of court proceedings and testimony and so on.